questions for Stephen here before we go off into groups. I mean, I've learned a lot and I have a lot to think about, and it was kind of scary how many of us checked those boxes. That I think there's a lot of disruptors sitting in this room.
That's an awesome thing.
Stefan, I have a question, if it's all right.
Please.
So there's several students on this call, and some of us are past or structured education, maybe is a good way to say it. And so, you know, one of the things that I think could be a challenge for, especially for new students that are finishing, is, do you have any advice or experience or examples of, you know, when you're new to the industry, you know, you're finishing your bachelor's degree or advanced degree, and you're going out and you see, because, you know, I think the spirit of people new to an industry is they see things that can be done in so many different ways. But do you have any advice for them how to balance seeing those things and what's required to truly become a disruptor or somebody that can help disrupt processes within a company in a positive way?
Yeah, that's really a great question. And that is a challenge for people just starting their careers in industry. On the one hand, you're coming to the industry with fresh new eyes, fresh new 21st century eyes, and you have a lot of ideas, really, really good ideas. And oftentimes you're surrounded by people who don't necessarily want to hear those ideas. And Rob, is that what you're kind of referring to? So here's my experience, and I'll give you one of my own experiences. I was working on the help desk. I was the guy who answered the phones for Zenith Data Systems computers years and years and years and years ago. You know, I was just a small guy at the bottom of the totem pole. And it was just when the internet was coming of age. And I quickly realized that Zenith Data Systems needed to start being there in that space, providing support for its customers on the internet, because all our competitors were starting to do that. And I wouldn't let go of this idea. You know, I was young and I was passionate, and I kept driving and I kept driving. And one day, the chief marketing officer from the top of the ivory tower showed up at my cube and said, "I heard that you are really trying to push the internet and you know about this. I got to do something here. I don't know what to do. Help me out." And my career in that moment took a right turn. And that launched me in an entirely different trajectory than I had been in before. And the two of us together put a department which, you know, changed the way the company did things. So my point is two things. First, don't give up. If you are really passionate about an idea, push and push and push and push. And if no one listens to you, go off and find a company that will listen to you, or start your own business. Because if you're that passionate, you're probably right. Yeah, there you go, Casey. And the second thing is, look and find somebody who will support you and help you in this idea. And most of the time, there's somebody like this chief marketing officer who had the same problem to solve and didn't know how to solve it. So for him, I was his savior, and for me, he was mine, right? And it was a perfect combination of people coming together. And you usually can find that. It takes determination. It takes being aggressive and assertive and going and knocking on doors of executives and them saying, "Well, why are you here?" and asking and being bold and asking the questions. But you know what? They honor and respect people, and it will do great things for your career. And you'll learn very quickly how to navigate and get things done. So Rob, does that answer your question?
Yep.
Good. Like I said, good question. Thank you for asking.
I do have a question for you, because Rob and I have had this conversation, and several other professionals in our industry, you know, where you don't think the brick and mortar universities are going away. There's obviously, I don't know if they're dying, but they're changing into You're going to have your research-based institutions and you're going to have your educational-based institutions. Do you think from an agriculture standpoint that we need to change our education system? You talked about technologies to non-technical farmers.
Yeah, to some degree, yes, because even animal science is living under the same constraints as other academic disciplines. You could go to University of X and spend $30,000-$40,000 a semester. And what are you going to get for that experience? You get to do adulting, right? You get to live away from mom and dad. You get to live in a dorm and learn those skills. But COVID came, took all that away, and students are still paying $30,000-$40,000 and not getting that half of the experience that they planned on. Or they can go to a place like WGU and spend $3,700 a semester and get a very high quality education. And people are starting to think, well, what's important to me? What am I really spending my money on? And this spills over into all universities. And I think what you said was really important about the brick and mortars turning into research institutions and educational institutions. So what is the niche brick and mortar will fall into to survive? Because many brick and mortars they're struggling. They're closing their doors. They're having a really hard time. There's certain things that you just can't do online. We have absolutely no classrooms, like I said, and all our professors, we have mentors, etc. They're all virtual. The people are real, the communication is virtual. But for our College of Nursing, you still have to go through that practical, that field study where you actually have to go to a physical hospital and do that work. So maybe that's the niche. And in animal science, you can't do all that work virtually. It's the same kind of thing, right? At some point, you got to get out in the field. You got to get out in the barn. You have to start experiencing that because that is real and that is tangible. So what is that focused experience that a brick and mortar college can provide where they're focusing their funds on not having a football team and a sports arena and a union and this and all these things that are part of student life, but spending that money, those focused sacred student dollars on that, very focused experience. And maybe that's the niche that they'll fall into. Again, with COVID, brick and mortars have gone through, well, maybe someday we'll think about online, to, oh my gosh, I've got a week to figure this out, have to become an online university. It forced them to do so. So they're thinking differently.
Any other questions?
Stephen, I have a question.
Yeah.
As a former faculty member, given the fact that agriculture has this gap between providing the adequate amount of food and students coming in that have any background in agriculture, how do you see using these various disruptive technologies to recruit some of this top talent into the agriculture fields?
Wow, that's a great question. Technology is finding its way to the farm. Clearly, we've gone from 50% to 2%, and it's been kind of slow, and it's a generational thing. I would say that animal science, agriculture really needs to push hard on technology and create that cultural shift that you are less farmer and more technologist. You are less farmer and more scientist, and make it more appealing to what students of today and tomorrow are looking for in the world. There's so much ground to be covered, so much innovation, so much disruption left to happen in this industry. And young, hungry students who are wanting to go out and make their mark in the world, being raised, surrounded by technology and social media and things that are very much second nature to them, knowing these tools. And most students graduate high school with some kind of knowledge of how to write computer software if they could, I think they could be attracted to these programs if the programs, I don't want to say caught up with the times, but were more forward thinking. Does that, have I answered your question?
I guess somewhat. I mean, if you currently look at the faculty within many of the brick and mortar institutions, many of them have been there 25 plus years, are resistant to technology, don't even know how to reply to an email, they will print it out. So it's a very slow moving, antiquated system.
Yep.
And this is primarily in the agriculture field. I feel as though I could speak freely about that as I used to be one. But how do we, with this current antiquated system, with people that are stuck in their ways and no longer have the innovative ideas that embrace the new technology, how do we bring alongside and show the younger students that are coming in that want to make a difference in the world and can move them into agriculture? And computer science is great, engineering, all of those people. I'm used to be at NC State. They all go career fairs. They all go to the various robotic companies and all the ones that are doing the sexy things, the Googles, the Facebooks, everything else. So what can we do to bridge this gap?
Okay, let me ask, who's the we?
Really, a combination of faculty that are currently at universities. How can, now that I'm in industry, Casey's in industry, Rob, I don't know if you're academics or industry, but how can us, I guess, middle-aged, slightly seasoned individuals that still get excited about the innovation can still see benefits of technology and can apply it? How do all facets of the various animal agriculture industry, how can we be used to recruit these students and show them benefits?
Yeah. Well, first of all, you're not alone. Every academic discipline is suffering from the same. I've been a professor here 35 years. I haven't done a new course for my whatever 101 class in 15. And I'm just going to teach this same way through retirement and just punch my ticket. So everybody suffers from that. It's a cultural change that is going to have to happen. It's just going to have to happen. And universities need to figure out how to make that happen or they will die. Either they will evolve or they will die. And the people like you who see this, I could go back and give the same statements that I made about young people getting into the industry. If you lead the charge, you obviously have the passion for this. If you lead the charge amongst your faculty colleagues and help them to understand, hey, the world has changed and you're going to be without a job unless you change, because this is not good for our students. We're preparing them for a world that doesn't exist. And I would say that if you can't bring computer science to agriculture, can you bring agriculture to computer science? These colleges and universities that are technology universities, maybe they should start teaching animal science. And I'm not sure that that's a great answer to your question, but because it's really hard. How do you take an institution that like Harvard, been around hundreds of years, and get them to completely reinvent themselves? It's not an easy thing to do, but they have to. They absolutely have to.
I'm going to pick on Edward and turn the table as a student. How would you recommend us middle-aged people turn the table? I mean, recruit?
Yeah.
well, actually, sometimes I feel discouraged when I when I say some of my ideas and people are like, this is dumb. But to what Stephen just talked about, like you said, some institutes, well, instead of bringing technology to animal science, people should bring animal science to like the other institutes, right? People are actually doing that. Like the people who study computer science, they make farming games and make profits out of it, and that's their own incentive to do it. But they make more money out of like doing robots, doing like using technology like Google, Amazon. So they don't really have the incentive to put those technology into agriculture. That's how I usually see the things. I don't know if you will agree, and that's happening everywhere, I guess.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's happening across the whole industry, and that goes back to, if you can't get somebody to listen, just go do it yourself. Yeah.
But yeah, but to Casey's problem, I really don't know, because like for me, I would probably, whatever Rob or Casey or everybody else says, I would just do it. I
Well,
wouldn't.
Edward, I'm going to tell you what I want you to do is send me all your ideas, and I'm never going to say they're dumb, and we're going to talk about your ideas.
Cool. Okay, I will.
Yeah, and Casey, thank you. And that's a great example of what I was saying earlier. Find somebody who's interested in your ideas and let them help you. And this is a great forum for that. Absolutely a great forum for that.
And bring them up early in your process. Edward, as you're interviewing for jobs or those things, talk about some of the things that drive some of your passions, because yeah, those are sometimes the same. And I'm just happy that Casey considers me middle age. I'm still happy about that. But because sometimes employers won't know what to write in job descriptions, and or they won't really need that fully. And so I think seeing that uniqueness, I mean, for us, we're always looking at what does somebody bring unique is a unique offering, and many times it's outside of the core job competencies. So
a very interesting change is happening in our world right now, that's opening some new and very different opportunities that didn't exist. We have these insanely wealthy individuals like Bill Gates, like Elon Musk, who have chosen to take their wealth, their fame, and use it to the betterment of society and humanity. I mean, Bill Gates retired from Microsoft, and his life is dedicated to fixing problems in humanity. And if you take your idea and find like-minded people and start doing it, whatever that idea is, and you start gaining traction, someday you're going to get a call from Bill Gates. And I'm speaking specifically in animal science, because that's one of the problems we have to solve in our world. And when that idea becomes interesting to one of these people, you may very well get a call from them. That's an avenue that didn't exist in the past, really. You're at the mercy of corporations or the government to like or not like what you're trying to do, and them determining whether it's going to make them money or not. But we have people that are looking at the world for the sake of humanity that may partner up with you. So don't let your ideas die.
I'm still hoping Elon Musk calls me and gives me a whole bunch of money to build my cookie bot, but we'll see. Any other questions?
The electric, Casey.
I just want to refresh really quick a conversation that Casey, you and Stephen had that I think applies to Kim's question, is creating markets in the industry that will be appealing to people. You guys had talked about more things being robotic-ish in the farm, so that you have more of like a person running things from their home, and then the people that like the animals and want to be with the animals being the ones in the barn. And if you're creating that industry, then that will draw the people to be studying and becoming part of that industry. Did I repeat that conversation?
Yeah, that's my desire, is that, we're going to have few people who want to work on the farm. If we can make their jobs easier, we can even get better caretakers, and maybe they like what they're doing instead of feel robotic. But we also have an issue. I agree with technology and stuff, but we also have this mindset that people don't they call us factory farms. We put more technology and more robotics in our farms, and now it is truly a factory. And it's not only a GMO shift, but oh, we don't have farmers taking care of our animals now. That's just awful. Where I can tell you, working with people in the hog barns on a regular basis, my ultimate goal is to get rid of about just every man I can, or woman, I didn't mean that, human on the farm as possible, because they are the animal welfare issues. They're, minds somewhere else a lot of times, and not maybe on that animal's needs. They're thinking about what the 5 things they have to do at home, or they're suffering from their weekend adventures. And so managing people on the farm and managing welfare, where our consumer sees it as a factory farm, I see it as an animal welfare opportunity to get rid of as many people as we can and let them be as naturally themselves with as little intervention as possible. But that's another great hurdle of being a disruptor, is how do we overcome that mindset that we got to have that farmer in bib coveralls out there taking care of our pigs every day, hugging those pigs, or those chickens, or the cows. And so that's a cultural shift right there, because we're already fighting that from the standpoint of the term factory farms and efficient farms. And Bill Gates of the world, who throws around all his money, is not helping us in that area.
Really?
Because he'd like to go back to the small farmer.
Yeah.
He's one of the main funders of the cultured meat, I believe. He's thrown a lot of money into finding plant alternatives to eggs.
Yeah.
But at the same time, you talked about, everybody's like, why is Tyson buying into the cultured meat, or why is Smithfield and stuff?
I would too.
Yeah.
It's the, if you don't embrace it, you're going to be left behind.
That's exactly right.
There is a market for it. I had my roommate from my master's contacted me 12 years ago asking me about my thoughts and opinions of cultured meat. That was 2009.
Yeah. So Casey, here's what I would say. Technology has replaced a lot of manual labor tasks. When you drive by a new road being built, or a building being built 75 years ago, it would be a huge crews of men with shovels. Yeah, there may be 1 or 2 guys with shovels. Now, shoveling's not a thing anymore. And the same thing may apply to the future of the farm. The people who love the animals want to be there with the animals, who are spending their time hauling buckets of feed and shoveling manure and doing all these things. If they don't have to do those things, what would that give them the opportunity to do instead, being with the animals? And perhaps there's a new career for the farmer who wants nothing to do with technology, to add value that's never been added to the farm, the literal boots on the ground. What could he do with those animals to provide value that it's never been able to be done before, because people have spent too much time with the manual labor? And then, like Noelle said, for those who are interested in animal science but aren't maybe not interested in being in the barn, they don't have to be there anymore. They can work in an office, and with remote monitoring and remote control and remote surveillance, they can take care of all the needs of the farm and collect the monitoring data and analyze this data, and the artificial intelligence and the robotics and all of that, without necessarily having to ever step foot on a farm. So there's the potential for the dynamic of farms to be wholly disrupted.
I think it takes Edward's game guys to come in and make a game out of saving as many animals as you can.
Yeah, absolutely. But it's real. You're playing a game that's actually real. Sim Farm is a real farm, right?
Yeah, and I was just going to say, I think there's some groups that are working hard in, over in Indiana and some of those areas to try to develop those farms that maybe have a lot more data points and management. I think the other thing though, as I travel around and talk with a lot of our customers, definitely everybody's looking at technology to, the term that most of them would be using is to elevate the work, right? So you're paying people more, you want higher quality people. And so how do you give them the tools to justify the paycheck and the work need and the knowledge that they have? And so using those technologies to elevate the work of all employees, because you'll have fewer employees, period. So to your point, if you put 100 guys on a road construction job, they'd be really confused. There'd be a lot of stuff. You'd have to stop a lot getting through there, I guess.
Yeah. It's funny how technology affects the labor market. There was a time that, before computers, when if you wanted to write a letter, you typed the letter manually. Or if you were a business person, you had a secretary who would type the letter manually. And there were typing pools in buildings where, 50 or 100 people, secretaries, would sit and do nothing but type. Well, the computer and the word processor took away, 50, 100 people out of a given company who were paid relatively small wages and replaced them with 50 or 100 IT people who were paid much larger wages. So what happened there? Where was the benefit? Clearly the people won out, but the story behind that is that allowed the company to be much more productive and effective.
Now I think of one example that I think is brilliant about combining technology and pig farming. It happened in China. Probably I saw this last year. So one of the things that happens in this industry is that pork is a commodity product. We don't make a lot of profit out of it. If there's any way we can increase the profit margin, it's a great thing, right?
Yeah.
So Alibaba is one of the biggest technology companies in China. And then they made this idea that they sell the pig before they're born. And so the customer claim the pig online and they have cameras, they see the pig growing, and then people will pay a lot more than what they're supposed to. And then when the pig is harvested, they deliver the pork product directly to their house. So the farmers they make more money, and then the technology companies helping farming. And then the customers don't think it's factory farm. They think it's a pet that I own, or the meat's gonna deliver to my plate. So I feel like that's an example. And I suggested during the COVID disruption of slaughterhouse last year, can we do this? Can we have restaurants claiming pigs before they're buried? But somebody said, oh, this is dumb, don't do it. But anyways, that's just, I think it's a great example, right?
Yeah, I think that's brilliant. I think that's brilliant. That is a disruption. You're taking an industry of doing things a certain way and totally turning it upside down. Yeah, you're still raising a pig, but the marketing strategy around that and the value proposition and the way that you sell that product is completely different. And it allowed them to get a higher price because now you're not solely dependent upon volume to make a profit. No, I think it's a great idea, Edward. You're a smart guy.
Well, I think another good one I heard was on Damian Mason's podcast. He interviewed the new owner of Muncie Meats, and I don't remember the gentleman's name, but ultimately he's creating a locker system like Amazon lockers for meat, but he's making it as a farmer's market where it's not just meat, but it's cheeses and stuff, so they can buy and they come pick it up whenever they want. So they're not having to go to the individual farmer. They're physically not even having to go to the farmers markets anymore. And I noticed that with COVID is a lot of them even went to online marketing. So I think that because of COVID, I think we were forced to be disruptive. And so I think We'll see more and more of that happening even in the food sector.
Yeah, no, I think you're right. I think you're right. Chaos breeds opportunity, and that has never been more true than what has happened during COVID. So much opportunity was born out of that unfortunate situation that we're still living in, actually.
So can I get somebody to raise their hands or say yes? Who are the 3 people that are disruptors? They're absolutely changing our industry today. Shannon, Edward,
One more.
Marissa.
There you go.
Hey. So what? Okay, one of you has to tell me why you're a disruptor.
You want me to go first, or?
Sure.
Well, I guess I volunteer. Actually, that fits what I'm doing now, because when I started my PhD, I was like one of those people like, okay, I'm gonna just do my PhD, go to the farm, work for a producer or somewhat. In the middle of my PhD, I feel like there's a huge gap between the research and the actual industry. And I decided to take a management minor. I took a lot of MBA classes. And I feel like I think of things in a different way now. So I brought different ideas to our group. And then, for example, what I'm doing with my PhD, I'm trying to compare the energy industry and the pork industry and see how things examples can be used. And then I feel like now I see things in a different angle. And then when I go to the job market, maybe one day I will find something that nobody else thought about. But I don't have a great example now because it's really hard to innovate.
Yeah.
It is hard. I look at one of the problems with growing things is you've got bugs in the soil and weeds that you're constantly battling and disease in the crops. And somebody had the bright idea, well, what if we just get rid of the soil? And hence hydroponics, right? There's no soil, it's just water. And when I lived in Arkansas, the home of Tyson, I would drive past these chicken farms, these long buildings that have been long buildings of chickens and chickens and chickens for how many decades or hundreds of years have chicken farmers raised chickens in that kind of environment. And I kept looking at these thinking there's got to be a better way of doing this. There's got to be a better way. There's got to be a way of removing the soil from this equation and create a healthier, more effective and productive environment for raising these chickens in. I don't know what the answer is to that, but somebody is going to figure it out.
Shannon or Marissa? I haven't broken out in groups because we have a small enough group. I think we're okay with staying in one pod. A few people looks like they've had to jump off, but Shannon or Marissa, why are you disruptors?
I'll go next. I didn't want it. I was afraid Marissa was going to like hop on and I start talking over her.
She's hiding.
Yeah, I noticed. So I think I'm a disruptor in the aspect of what I plan. So we talked about it a little bit earlier as far as just while, Dr. Bradley, you said you would like to remove the amount of people working in the farm, right? And I respect that. But while I think there's a fine line between making things more automated, but keeping people that are passionate about it. And so my goal is to expose people to that passion or ignite the passion in them for the agricultural industry. Because I think we need more people with boots on the ground that are going to make a difference and have their voices be heard and can stand up to nothing against Bill Gates. He's got a lot of money. He's got a lot of great ideas, but I take lab grown meat personally, and I want a voice that's going to fight that because it's going to be something that will require a lot of fight in the future, I think. And so that's where I think, if nothing else, I'm loud and I'm proud, and I will, one way or another, either people are going to join me or they're just going to get out of my way. So that's why I think my passion is really going to.
I'm
Good for
curious,
you, Shannon.
why do you want to fight cultured meat?
Well, let me rephrase. I don't want to fight cultured meat necessarily. I think it can help solve some of the issues with food security. I want to fight it in the negative aspects that it brings to the agricultural industry. I think there's a way to maybe harmoniously present them together, and instead it's one end or the other. So I think,
don't you believe that if like Tyson, who's currently starting to embrace cultured meat, that is clearly invested in the animal agriculture, animal protein side of things, that's a good thing to that they have options for everybody?
yes, I agree with that, but I don't think there has quite been, I don't think we've quite bridged the gap between it being just equal options across the board. I think there's negatives to both sides, right? Because there's people that push like meatless Mondays, for instance, but what sort of a negative aspect does that bring to the agricultural and food production side of things? So I don't disagree with you, Kim. I think it just requires more of like on this level instead of right now where I feel like it's a lot more one side versus the other. But I think with like Tyson, or I mean, even Smithfield's been working on their like Beyond Meat stuff, if nothing more than consumer perception for several years. They've really taken a step in the right direction for that. And so I think we're moving, but we just need to try to keep things on an even playing field at this point.
I agree. I agree with Shannon. But the story about Tyson and Impossible Burger, they're different. For Kim's question, I think Tyson need to do this as a hedging strategy. Otherwise, they're gonna die if that's the future, right? So they have to bet on both sides. But for Impossible Burger, I'm against them because their vision or their value is to eliminate animal agriculture. That's written in their statement. They don't want animal agriculture anymore. So I'm against that. If you're marketing your product to a certain population, I'm fine with it. Like take a small cake out of us. But if you want to eliminate this industry, I don't think that's the way to go. So I agree with Shannon. Like in this case, I would be against it.
But I'm going to pose this question to you. If it tasted the same, it was just as healthy, it cost less, it had no emissions, and you never had to kill a cow again, would that be okay? Because I've killed, I don't know, maybe close to 1 million in my life, or, sent physically killed, where I've sent that many to slaughter. It's a lifestyle change. And that's what Stephen talked about, being a disruptor, as, agriculture is on that brink, I think, of that it's that mindset. I even notice it in my son. He's a lot more empathetic than I ever was towards feelings, and kids are allowed to have feelings. Most kids never had to eat their pet pig or pet lamb, but think about it. I understand Shannon's standpoint. You are a disruptor to get more people passion, sharing that passion, talking to a different audience. But question the focus of that passion, because I'm completely okay with saying if I never had to slaughter another pig to eat and I could still get the same quality and taste and culture out of it over the dinner and the same nutrition, I'd be okay with that.
So then you have a different issue that comes up because I've heard from producers, if they put this out, then there's less support for taking care of the animals. And then what happens when they die? Because they will. And how many animals have had to be put to death that had no benefit to people, because now we're not eating the meat, now we're just throwing it away.
Well, it's not going to happen overnight, and it will be our producers are good at future casting where the production needs are, and they will reduce the amount of cows.
I'm not sure. Maybe that's in the poultry side. In the pig side, no, we don't do that. Yeah. Sorry.
I mean, you've seen it after HPAI. They went through on the layer side. They reduced pullets. You've seen a reduction in turkeys from the butterball side of things because less people are eating the big turkeys for Thanksgiving. So you'll slowly see a reduction with less demand. It's not like overnight everybody's going to switch to cultured meat. And even as Steven said, there's going to be some demand for it always.
Mhm. Yeah, I still think you'll have your niche livestock operations. And I still think if we look at agriculture today, that we are in the midst of the big shift. We are going to have the corporate giants and we're going to have the niche producers. And I don't care what species or crop, I think that is what we're facing. So
Yeah, and I would just say, I mean, we don't always have to agree, Casey, right?
yeah.
I think it's hard to say in a perfect world this scenario, because I mean, there's not zero emissions with anything we do.
No.
And so I think all those things are out there. I think we've had a great story in agriculture as we've reduced the amount of corn that it takes to raise a chicken, pig, use of amino acids, a lot of those things. And it's a good story, and it's a sustainable story if we keep making it more sustainable all the time. We stop innovating in agriculture, then that will make agriculture replaced at a faster rate. There's no doubt about that.
So that brings me up to what I wanted to talk about, I guess, in the groups. We talked about the overarching disruptor technologies. Does anybody have an idea of what we need to be doing from a disruption? Edward made a good point about owning the pig. I've always thought that's a great idea, having shares in that meat before it hits your plate. Is that a technology or disruption that we need?
I still think that's a niche, not necessarily gonna be a large scale kind of thing. There are 1.5 billion pigs being slaughtered every year. We're not gonna do that to every single pig.
Talk to the boys down the street in Bentonville. They definitely have. I mean, they've bought up aspects to be able to sell a pig online, a cow online. I mean, they've worked pretty hard through blockchain and everything else to secure the ability to do some of those things, Edward, for not very much money.
And I wonder if that's not like the future, in a way. I'm not saying like on a wide scale, but there's an awful lot of people that want to know where their food comes from, right? And we've got to figure out how to get, how to compete with these cultured meats and the soybean meats and all this, all those things. And so maybe that is one way. Yeah, I didn't hear about that before Edward brought it up, but I really think that would be a good idea to get people more, comfortable with the way their pork is raised.
But I also have, sorry, Rob. But this sometimes it's like we don't know if it's a good idea until it's been done. Like for example, TikTok, it's a disruptor, I would say. Well, for most people who doesn't know TikTok, it's just another social media, right? And it's been a very trending thing. It's a Chinese app, and it's very trending in China. And then a lot of influencers use TikTok to help people, putting people out of poverty. Like for example, let's say as a small town in southern Minnesota has this many pigs, and they sold, this is not a real example, but they can sell all the porks in one night, because in Chinese New Year, there's one influencer sell $20 million worth of product out of one village in 2 seconds. So that could be when people started having a feeling, they feel like we need to help the farmers and stuff, that could happen. We don't know.
Shannon's the next TikTok star of the U.S. selling out all the pork producers.
Well, and I think we've got to kind of think beyond just, these big picture things that we can change. But if we just make a small impact and be a disruptor in our, in our organizations and in our small, circle of influence, I think, slowly we'll make some change and make some headway. We're not all going to, develop the next TikTok. But if I can like inspire a farm manager to use less gestation feed, that's good for our company, good for the environment, right? And just disrupting by planting all those seeds of change and stuff by just getting folks engaged within our
I think it's
institution.
important to realize that Steve Jobs did not first come out with the iPhone. There were steps all throughout the way. And even if you go back and Steve Jobs didn't invent or come up with the idea of the iPhone, it's the matter of he heard other people's visions. You could go back. There was I heard a replaying of Walter Cronkite's what the world will look like in 2020. And it was played from 1960. And it said, people will be able to watch the news from around the world on their television, and they'll be able to have a video conference. And all of these things were far out there ideas in 1960 when Steve Jobs was a child and heard them. And he did not come up with the ideas, and he did not even necessarily invent the technology, but he found the people to help him develop this vision. And it was slow steps. And it wasn't just the iPhone that we all look back and say, wow, look at this disruptive technology and how much it changed the world, which it did. But it's all in little steps that, Stephen, you pretty well implemented or showed throughout your presentation.
Yeah. Steve Jobs, he's an interesting guy. He was, from what I understand, he was not great to work for because he was an absolute perfectionist. And that was his contribution to the process. He wasn't an engineer. He was a perfectionist with vision. And he, no matter what, you will do it his way. And he made the iPhone such a perfect device as far as the touch sensitivity and the size and the form factor. And someone who was not Steve Jobs, who would have been in charge of that project, wouldn't have done that, and it would not have been successful. And so I like you bringing up that point. It's a very, very good one.
I think that also brings up a point. If we go to our survey, I threw this out there thinking maybe it would score low based on the conversation, but 60% of you said you need leadership skills to be a disruptor. And I think that goes into the story of Steve Jobs, right?
Yep.
Not exactly his original ideas, but he didn't give up when somebody told him his idea was stupid. And he kept making incremental progress to perfection.
He did. And he had failures. Not everything Steve Jobs touched turned to gold. The Apple Lisa was a failure. The Apple Newton was a failure. Even the Macintosh, which we feel was wildly successful from a business standpoint, wasn't really that successful as far as profit goes.
Well, in that way, his perfectionism and got in the way of profitability and made it where it was too expensive for the common person to purchase. And that's where IBM took off. And then you had Dell that was able to come in and provide cheap personal computers.
Yep.
Another thing I found interesting on this conversation with a lot of nutritional students and nutritional professionals is that I asked what technologies will become disruptors in the livestock industry, and feed additives scored the lowest. So is that a consensus from us all here that we have invented the last phytase?
There's too many companies that are into the Me Too's, and they're not willing to venture out into the new innovative ideas, in my view. Being a person that's currently marketing a quote unquote new technology, which is not new, by the way, taking that out to many of the super seasoned nutritionists, they are hesitant to try new technologies. And there's only so many new enzymes that are really exciting. And in my view, too many of the feed additive companies are too much Me Too's. They're going to look for another bacillus. They're going to look for another enzyme, and they're not going out and really. In my view, they work too closely with the animal science faculty and not with the true innovators, which would be the biochemists, and that are coming up with the newer ideas, in my view.
Andrea, thoughts on that from being in production innovation and, services to producers?
Yeah, I don't know. I get overwhelmed by all the feed additives. I'm going to be honest with you. And good nutrition and execution is really the strong, whole things that are going to help us be profitable, right? Not, there are some feed additives that we do rely on, like Taste being one of them, that is 100%. Well, it's very proven to be effective and efficacious, but some of these other ones, it's just, don't have a lot of strong faith in many of them. So, in the whole Me Too thing, I totally agree with, there's so many different things that are claiming to do the same exact or have the same exact effect. Well, I mean, yeah.
But in my view, to be truly disruptive on the feed additive animal nutrition side, I believe the future is more the precision nutrition. I would think working along with the engineers that are developing sensors, getting retinal scanners that can identify through retinas, through temperature sensors, etc., using biomarkers that are indicating an animal's health status, nutritional status, and can more precisely feed them within the barn and feed them more as individuals as opposed to a population. That's really where animal nutrition is going. In 30, 40 years, I believe that's where we'll land.
And all that technology you're talking about, Ken, is like, that's going to be the biggest cost savings for the producer, right? It's not, we put this magical feed additive in there and we shaved like a couple of points off feed conversion. That is a benefit, right? But like, if we could feed a few different lactation diets and blend them together or something, and that's going to save us like dollars,
Right, and it would bring your CVs within the. For me, I'm a feather worker, so within the flock, get the broilers more, bring up the ones that are small, the runts, and get your CVs better, and identify disease status, so that would reduce your drug costs later on. All of those things is where the industry is going to end up going in 30, 40 years from now.
Why is it going to take 30 to 40 years? What's stopping somebody to disrupt that and make that 5 years?
It's the old antiquated people that we are fighting within the industry. Animal agriculture is very antiquated. Very few of them are actually willing to embrace new technologies.
Yeah,
and I think just getting it done at the barn level, right? We've got really smart controllers, but we, don't use all the features on them today. And then we've got people talking about, other sensors, et cetera. We've got to really use the technologies we already have today, and then build on some of that other stuff.
It's getting the engineers excited about animal agriculture and getting people that are currently involved in animal agriculture open to technologies. So many of them poo-poo any new technology, any new idea, because it's different. They don't see the value in it. They see it as too expensive. They see all of the roadblocks. And it really takes more of the innovators, and it takes time, just like Steve Jobs took a long time to get the iPhone to where it is.
I'm going to pick on some of our other guests that haven't spoke. Can they take themselves on mute or put them on video? So we got Yasina, Vanessa, I think, is Jorge still on? Lily? I think we lost a couple people. I'm curious, Vanessa, what are your thoughts?
So I'm kind of doing a camera system project for my master's with beef cattle and dairy cattle, more specifically with calves. And what I'm finding is we're working with the engineer department to actually set up this camera system that will eventually estimate growth for our calves. So what I am finding is that the engineers have no idea what they're talking about when it comes to animals. So just the basics of just ears or the physical, they don't even know what that is. And I think the struggle is, how do we get, I think for us as students and future agriculture, how do we get myself, for instance, into that engineering component to make our industry better? Because it's hard to get an engineer who's not passionate about animals. Maybe we go the opposite way and try to incorporate maybe in our curriculum or in our, put a few of those engineering things like Python, like currently working with machine learning programs right now, maybe doing it the opposite way. That was just kind of my thoughts.
So we need to train our animal scientists differently versus recruiting different people.
Correct.
We still want to recruit the passionate Shannons of the world, but that can sit there and do Python. Shannon, can you do Python or R yet?
R, I'm becoming pretty proficient on. So there's hope for me. There's hope for me.
Good for you, Shannon.
All right. Yasina, curious on your thoughts. Or Lily?
Hey, can you hear me?
Yep.
Oh, okay. I was some technical problems. Yeah, for me, that's a very interesting point of view of all of you because I was studying in the United States 2 years ago, and I'm learning a lot. So now another country, but here in South America, it's the industry is a little different. So I think so we need use more technology, but at the same time, in South America, I mean, there is a lot. Well, there's a few maize producers. Sorry. And I mean, now I'm just listening and thinking, what is the difference between the two realities and how we can improve agriculture. So for me, it's very interesting to participate, and maybe I can be a disruptor. I hope very soon. So now I have a storm of ideas, but that is very nice. And well, that's all.
Well, I'm going to reach out to you because this came up in the conversation in the last 2 weeks. So obviously I interview a pig producer from Ghana. I have some students that I've brought over, and now I have a student here at University of Arkansas from Ghana. And I have a lot of pig producers in Africa reaching out to me, desperately needing my knowledge. We just all assume we're all smart farmers and that we have all these massive farms because we're here in the US or China who productions is scaled. But Edward, you could even say in China, and I could even say here in Missouri or Arkansas, there's those still farmers who aren't tech savvy, who never probably will be, but yet we look at food security as a global concern in different regions than the more third world type countries. We need a disruptive technology that brings our expertise and our abilities to those producers. And where I see for somebody in Africa, the simple thing, balancing amino acids or vitamins, is disruptive for them. It will improve their production, but we're sitting here saying that it's not possible. So we have our own issues in modern agriculture, but we probably have to look at it that 50% of the agriculture is still not modern. So Bill Gates is probably trying to solve those problems more. We see them as a threat here for modern ag. But when we look at out of our backyards and we look at the global issue, just the connections between Africa, for instance, there is a need for our knowledge and expertise to help them. And, we have not bridged that gap. That brick and mortar disruptor, how can like South Dakota State use their teaching facility and the virtual tours that you guys, put on Pig Progress? How can you bring that to Africa to teach people how to breed a sow? What's a proper body condition? Is that TikTok? Is that, influencers? We see it differently, and maybe we're talking to the wrong audiences. Maybe we need to change our consumer if we're in the knowledge business. Any thoughts on that?
Yeah, you are right. Yeah. It's a different, exactly point of view that a different region, so we can be a disruptor. Yeah, exactly. I'm okay with that.
So I have a story. One of our professors led a team of animal science students to Africa, I think before COVID. I can't remember which summer. And then they are very passionate about bringing knowledge to Africa. And then when they arrive in the village, those are dairy science students. They're really good. I mean, and then when they arrive in the village, they realize they cannot teach them anything because they don't even have electricity to connect to the fridge to store the milk. So there's nothing they can teach them about how to about all this dairy science fancy terms and things. So I feel like to Cassie's point, it's maybe we should bring what's applicable to some of the third world countries, those knowledge, instead of thinking about, okay, should we do fake meat, lab grown meat versus intensive agriculture? I mean, for a huge population in the world where there is need for more of the very basic things that we need to bring them to, I guess. Or for example, the courses that you are having in terms of nutrition, maybe using internet to bring knowledge to Africa. That's the next disruptor, right? I don't know.
Yeah, so we're already talking about that, of how does coffee and careers in animal science, our students, become virtual boots on the ground in Africa. That's the disruptive technology I'm looking at. So multiply myself or my knowledge. If I can't be there, there's no reason why we can't be there virtually anymore. There's some things that we're going to lose out on because we can't. Something disruptive in technology, from your standpoint, Stephen, and you could call me crazy if it's even possible, but with virtual, you only get sight and sound. We're losing our other senses. Where that's where I guess the sensors come in and tell us what we're supposed to be smelling. But
maybe there's VR, augmented reality, those kind of things. I think there are people doing that already, like virtual tour to farms and stuff. Maybe that's the next to-go thing.
But you still can't feel and taste and smell.
True.
Edward, can you walk in?
That's coming very quickly.
Right.
Very quickly.
Because I'm going to say, Edward, can you walk in a barn and smell and taste a Clostridium? Have you been able to do that? Can you do that? Anybody on here?
But there are engineers that are currently working on that, looking at organic compounds that are changed by microbes within the gut that give some identification. So where we can't sense it, that it's picking up senses like dogs do.
Well, I just kind of mentioned that because at one time, and I'm probably not as good as I used to be because I've done it enough, that it's that smell taste type thing. You don't taste it, but I'm just saying you look at the poop pile, you smell it, you feel it. You can get a sense of what disease you have. And that's, even in modern ag, in my opinion, that type of skill is gone. That's animal husbandry through experience. So if we look at modern versus antiquated ag, there's still that ability, like you said, that we need some disruptor technologies like those sensors and those compounds to pick that up, to where people don't have that experience to have ever lived through a disease to know. This has been some great conversation. Any other questions, comments? Lily's been quiet still.
Sorry. Who was still not sleeping because of the daytime saving light.
Oh, yeah, I'm sorry.
Yeah, I was totally agreeing with you on those African and global things, because we haven't have had a side project in China. We have like a WeChat, and we work with Zhao Hui Edward, who is also with us. So I think what we do is to make our voices to be listened and by other people, not just people in the industry, but all the people. So I think we would let them know how our industry is going, and using the social medias to make our voice be listened. So I think that is also a disruptions. Yeah.
Well, I would say your group is a disruptor, what you're doing to share knowledge, that is for sure. But great conversations. It's getting late. People who aren't used to the time change. Stephen, any last minute thoughts from your end on some of these conversations and directions?
For me, it's been great conversations. I've learned so much just listening, and I can hear and see the passion that all of you have. And I would just encourage you to not take no for an answer, and realize that you're up against a massive culture change, and that's really, really, really hard. In corporations, when you have to institute a culture change, you plan on 2 years to make that happen. So it's a long thing, and don't give up. The ideas that you have and the passion that you have are going to be the future of animal science. So stay with it.
And well, I have another comment. I really thank you, Stephen, because you have a lot of encouragement tonight. Because this morning I read another book, and it have a quote that all dumb ideas sounds brilliant until they are proven to be dumb. So I have a really depressed day, you know. But yeah, I like those encouragements.
Yeah, no, absolutely. You've got some great ideas, Edward. All of you do. And you have a clear vision of what you think needs to happen in this industry. And yeah, make it happen.
Edward, if someone tells you you have a dumb idea, go tell someone else that idea instead.
I will for sure tell you, Kim. Because yeah, when last year when COVID started and we have disruptions of supply chain pork industry, we did have brainstorm. I have a lot of ideas. Okay, we can do this, we can do that, and none of them like really been heard. So I feel like, okay, maybe I should just keep it quiet, you know.
I think you're talking to the wrong people.
That's true.
And And sometimes rejection by one is a good thing because the next person you present that idea to will help you shape it into the next iPod.
There you go.
So I have a lot of harebrained ideas. I heard even Shannon talk about her professor. I come up with all these wild, cool ideas. My professor brings me back to reality. And I think sometimes we do. I'm a dreamer. I live in the sky. And I have to be pulled down by reality at times. And, you know, corporate America was too much of a noose. So that's kind of why I took a leap to say I needed to try something different. But at the same time, you struggle with your innovations because you need somebody to help support you, and that's usually financially. So a lot of that stuff that Kim mentioned and stuff on here, you know, I was doing when I had a corporate research budget, and it stalled. So you do fight battles no matter where you are. And I think Stephen made a good point as you choose your careers. If one company just keeps telling you no, find one that'll say yes.
Yeah.
Or find a division within your company when you
Yeah.
have your harebrained ideas that you can pitch it to, that they can help you develop it.
Yep.
Like that.
And that's ultimately what I did with my one precision feeding equipment that even Andrea talked about if we could do. They threw it in under another, they had a sustainability grant, corporate grant, and they threw my project in underneath that. And we tweaked it to fit, but yet it was still, as I said, if you don't talk to anybody, then, you know, nobody knows what great ideas you have, and nobody's going to come to your cubicle. And obviously he kept talking to people, and it got around in his first job, and that changed his career. And so, yeah, Edward, don't give up that they're, you know, we try not to let Arthur use the word stupid. So stop saying that about those two words, stupid or dumb, about your ideas.
Yep.
And maybe it's just talking enough or loud enough, like Shannon. Shannon's going to, you know, she's going to have a presence. She is a force to be reckoned with, and she's going to succeed. I know she is. But sometimes you just got to keep speaking until you're heard. So everybody,
well,
go ahead, Andrea.
We've got to, like, you know, vocalize what our thoughts are, because, you know, maybe they aren't great ideas, right? But unless they'll never get better until we work with others to improve them and get that feedback and that constructive criticism. So, yeah.
And so, Andrea, are you willing to have Edward bounce ideas off of you from a field nutritionist perspective?
Sure. I think
I have her
like
contact.
Cousins or something. We're related somehow.
Well, Minnesota, you're an academic brother and sister.
Yeah.
Yep.
Or cousins, or whatever the last speaker named. I can't remember what we called it.
You know, Andrew, you bring up a good point. Ideation follows the same process that I talked about tonight. That first idea may not be a great idea, but in discussing it and trying things, that continuous improvement eventually will lead to innovation and disruption.
Well, I think that's some great points. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Stephen, very much for the great
Thank you for the
presentation. I
invite.
learned a lot.
Well,
it was
good.
a lot
Thank
of
you.
fun, and I hope our students enjoyed it too. So if you get a survey here the next day or two, if I can get my work done, please fill it out and let me know what you think. I think we have some good poll results to share. I'm hoping to write a good summary piece on coffee and careers for the year and breaking new grounds, some insights that I've learned from all of you, because that's my goal, is to learn just as much as I teach. And so thank you, and wishing you all the best. Hopefully I'll see most of you again on Friday. So
Thank you all.
Thank you. Nice to meet all of you.
Have a good night.
Thank you.